Growing up in Oregon, my parents had this massive cabin property that basically made me the go-to person whenever anyone wanted to hang out on weekends. The place sat on around 3 acres of land, completely surrounded by dense forest on every side except the front driveway. We had everything scattered across the property. A fire pit near the back, an old wooden shed my dad used for tools, a rope swing hanging from this giant oak tree, and even a small creek running along the eastern edge. For our neighborhood, we were basically living the dream. There was plenty of open space for any activity you could think of. Basketball, frisbee, capture the flag, you name it. We'd spend hours running through the trees, playing games, especially this one we called Hunter, which was basically an intense version of hide and seek. One Saturday night during 8th grade, my buddy Derek and I decided we wanted to do a sleepover outside in the woods. His cousin Matt was visiting from Seattle, and my friend Carlos from school was coming too. We figured it would be epic. All of us had to clear it with our folks first, but since it was the weekend and we were around 13 or 14, nobody really objected. Plus, my family had all this camping stuff already. A couple 4-person tents that my dad used for hunting trips, sleeping bags, the whole setup. Once everyone's parents gave the okay, we arranged for them to show up around 4 in the afternoon so we'd have time to mess around before dark. We spent the first hour or so playing basketball on the driveway, 2 versus 2, and then moved over to the rope swing by the creek, where we took turns seeing who could jump the furthest into the shallow water. After we got tired and dried off a bit, my mom brought out some burgers and hot dogs that my dad grilled up for us. We ate around 6 or 6:30, I think. The sun was getting lower in the sky by then, turning everything orange. That's when we knew it was time to actually set up the tents before we lost all the light. I'd done this plenty of times before since I was in Scouts. So I took the lead, while the other guys mostly stood around handing me stakes and poles. By the time we finished, it was pretty much dark outside. My dad had turned on the floodlights near the house, which gave off this weird yellowish glow across the yard. Now it was dark enough to play Hunter, which we'd been looking forward to all day. The property had endless hiding spots. Behind the shed, under the deck, in the tree line, near the creek. We decided to play in teams. Derek and I would hide first, while Matt and Carlos hunted. The way we played, you had to make it back to home base, which was the front porch steps. No camping near the base was allowed, obviously. The shed was way in the back corner of the property, where the forest got really thick. I crouched down behind it, waiting and watching. The hunters had to yell, "Go!" when they started looking, and once I heard Matt shout it, I just stayed low, watching them sweep the yard in the distance. I was waiting for the perfect moment to make a break for the porch. I had my eyes on the deck, which was attached to the house. If I could get behind that, I'd have a straight shot to the steps. When both Matt and Carlos were turned away checking different parts of the yard, I bolted toward the deck and slid behind it just in time. But right as I got there, I heard this loud crash, like something metal falling over, coming from the side of the house. Then the motion sensor light kicked on over by the garbage cans. The deck wouldn't have triggered that light. I peeked around the corner toward the side yard and saw this really tall figure dressed in all black, practically jogging toward the woods. It definitely wasn't my dad. I ran over to the other guys and called off the game immediately, then went inside to tell my dad what I saw. He came out with a flashlight and we searched the edge of the woods for a few minutes, then walked up and down the street looking for suspicious cars. Nothing. He told us we should probably sleep inside tonight, which obviously sucked since we've been planning this all week. We went in and just played video games on the couch for a while. I described to my friends again what I'd seen. Just some tall person in dark clothing heading into the forest after almost knocking over the trash cans. We started talking about maybe just going back outside anyway since the tents were already set up, and realistically, what were the chances that person was still hanging around hours later? After we finished gaming, we quietly snuck back outside. We didn't exactly hide it from my dad, but we also didn't announce it. We each grabbed our sleeping bags. Derek and I took one tent while Matt and Carlos took the other. For a while, we were joking around, yelling stuff between the tents, throwing pine cones at each other's tent walls. Eventually, we started settling down to actually sleep. I wasn't asleep yet, but Derek seemed to be. Then I started hearing footsteps in the grass nearby. Slow, deliberate steps, getting closer to the tent. The zipper started moving, and I looked up, expecting to see my dad checking on us. Through the opening, I saw a face peering in, and for a second, I thought it was him. He said, "What are you guys doing out here?" I answered something like, "They really wanted to camp out, so we came back outside." But then I looked closer at the face in the dim light. It wasn't my dad at all. It was some random guy, probably around my dad's age, just staring at us. It looked like he was about to crawl inside when I absolutely lost it and screamed as loud as I could. Derek woke up instantly and started screaming too. The guy reached in and grabbed both our wrists, saying something like, "Be quiet, be quiet." But when he realized we weren't going to stop, he let go and bolted out of the tent. I yelled for everyone to get inside the house, and as we were running toward the porch, my dad was already coming out the front door after hearing the screaming. I told him I didn't know which direction the guy went, but that the man from earlier was back. My dad ran around the property yelling and basically daring the creep to come out and face him. We heard all of it from inside the living room. My mom called the cops, of course. When the officer showed up, all he really did was take my statement about what happened and said he'd file a report. At least having it on record meant the police knew there was someone sketchy in the area. I have no idea if that guy ever came back to our property, or if he eventually got caught doing something similar somewhere else. Either way, it messed with my head for a long time. And honestly, thinking about what could have happened if we hadn't screamed, it could have been so much worse. This happened a few years back, sometime around 2020. I was staying over at my friend's place. I'll call her Jess to keep it simple. I'd been looking forward to this sleepover for weeks. We'd been planning to stay up all night talking about high school drama and watching terrible reality TV. Now, the thing about Jess's house is that it was really isolated. I'm talking seriously out in the middle of nowhere. The house was surrounded by thick woods in every direction, and their closest neighbor was probably half a mile down the dirt road. But the weirdest part was the back of her house. It was right on the edge of this steep drop-off that went down to a rocky shoreline along the bay. The night started off pretty normal. Our other friend Riley was there too. We played stupid games like Truth or Dare, watched TikToks, did face masks, typical stuff. It was getting late, probably around 10:30 or 11. But we decided to take a walk down the dirt road that connected to the other houses further out. We asked Jess's mom if it was cool, and she said fine, just stay together. So we headed out. After maybe 10 or 15 minutes of walking, we noticed this guy on the other side of the road walking toward us. At first, we didn't think much of it. Maybe just someone else out for a night walk or whatever. But something felt off. This guy was wearing really heavy clothes, like it almost looked like a winter coat and layers of sweaters. It was bizarre because it was pretty warm that night, probably in the mid-60s. We all glanced at each other as we passed him, and that's when it hit us, the smell. This absolutely rancid, disgusting odor coming off of him. I can't even describe how bad it was. It was so strong that after we got a few feet past him, my friend took this huge gasp, like she'd been holding her breath the entire time. Riley actually ran off the road into the grass and almost threw up. At that point, we all agreed we should head back. Riley was practically begging us to turn around. On our way back, we passed him again. This time we held our breath before getting close. But when we looked back over our shoulders, we realized he wasn't walking in the opposite direction anymore. He turned around and was following us. This was seriously annoying. This disgusting smelling dude was now bringing his stench even closer to us. We had no choice but to speed up. We started walking faster and faster. We still had probably a mile before we'd get back to Jess's house. As we sped up, so did he. We all looked at each other, half scared, half irritated. We picked up the pace even more, almost jogging now. But this guy matched our speed. Now we were running, and Riley looked back and then let out this ear-piercing scream. That made Jess and me look back too, and what we saw still haunts me. This man was full-on sprinting at us now, and he had something in his hand. It looked like a knife or some kind of blade. All three of us started, screaming while we ran down that road as fast as we could. Our screams must have freaked him out because he stopped chasing us. He just stopped in the middle of the road and stood there, completely still, watching us run away. We didn't stick around to see what he wanted. We just ran straight back to Jess's house. Once we got inside, we slammed the door and decided not to tell her parents since they were already asleep and we didn't want to freak them out. We all went to the living room to set up our sleeping bags and tried to calm down. A couple hours passed. It was probably around 1:30 or 2 in the morning at this point. We were watching some horror movie. I can't even remember which one now. I mentioned earlier that Jess's house had those big windows on the back overlooking the drop-off, right? I was sitting on the couch right next to one of those windows. It was pitch black outside. All you could hear were the waves hitting the rocks below and the occasional wind. Then, all of a sudden, I heard footsteps outside, like right outside the window. I told my friends, and Jess said it was probably the deer that always comes by. For the past couple of years, Jess had been feeding this deer that would come right up to the window looking for food. I got kind of excited because that meant the deer might come right up to the glass where I was sitting. I decided to look outside, but I couldn't see anything. It was too dark. I suggested we go outside to see the deer up close, but Jess and Riley both said no. They reminded me about what happened earlier with that guy on the road, and I agreed it probably wasn't smart. So we went back to the movie. Another hour or so went by, and we were all getting tired. We turned off the TV and got under our blankets. It was maybe 45 minutes later when Jess and Riley had both fallen asleep. But I felt wide awake. I had this nagging feeling in my gut that something wasn't right, like I shouldn't go to sleep yet. I decided to look outside again. The moon was just bright enough that you could make out the water and the rocks below. I spent a few minutes just staring out, trying to relax. Then, out of the corner of my eye, I saw movement in the trees off to the left. I turned my head that way, but didn't see anything. I knew I saw something, though. So I grabbed the flashlight that was sitting on the shelf next to the couch and pointed it toward where I saw the movement. This was probably the worst decision I could have made, because when I did, I saw him, that man from earlier. But this time, he didn't have the heavy coat on. He was completely shirtless, just standing there in the trees, staring at the house. I wasn't about to find out what else he wasn't wearing. I tried to wake up Jess and Riley to tell them what I saw. Riley woke up, but Jess was out cold. She's always been a really deep sleeper. I told Riley to look outside, but when we both looked, he was gone. Riley looked at me like I was messing with her. I swore I wasn't, but she didn't believe me. She went back to sleep, and I was left lying there alone. It was around 4 a.m. now. I hadn't slept at all, but I could feel myself finally starting to drift off when I heard a knock on the front door. I almost jumped out of my sleeping bag. I knew I shouldn't, but curiosity got the better of me. I walked over to the door and looked through the peephole. Again, I saw nothing. My mind had to be playing tricks on me. I went back to the couch and pulled the blanket over my head, and eventually I fell asleep. But I woke up maybe 20 minutes later in a cold sweat. Something was wrong again. My whole body was shaking. And then I smelled it. That familiar, disgusting stench. That rotting smell. I almost threw up right there. As soon as I sat up, I heard footsteps coming toward me in the dark, and I screamed. I flicked on the flashlight, and there he was, the man from the road, standing in the corner of the living room, just staring at me. My scream woke up Jess and Riley, and they screamed too. As we screamed, the man turned and bolted out of the house through the front door we must not have locked. Jess's mom and dad came running downstairs, and after a few minutes, we told them everything that had happened. Jess's mom called the police, while her dad grabbed his rifle and walked down the road to see if he could find the guy. After the police came and took all our statements, I went home. My parents didn't say much when I got there. They just hugged me for what felt like forever. From that moment on, I wasn't allowed to do sleepovers anymore. Only years later did I finally learn just how bad things really were. The police eventually caught the guy, and inside an old abandoned shed about a quarter mile from Jess's house, the same shed we used to dare each other to go near, they found 4 bodies. And that smell that was on that man's body, that was the smell of death. If things hadn't gone the way they did that night, my friends and I would have ended up in that shed too. I work in financial consulting for a firm in Chicago. I've gotten to know a lot of great people through this job. We go out for drinks pretty regularly after work. In early 2020, this new guy named Alex got transferred to our office from the Denver branch. I met him on his first day. He seemed super outgoing and energetic, always cracking jokes, always smiling, always telling stories. He came out with us that first Friday, and honestly, he dominated the conversation. He talked about all these wild experiences he'd had, all the places he'd traveled, crazy things he'd done. There was never a quiet moment when he was around. Eventually, Alex and I became pretty good friends, and we started hanging out one-on-one outside of work. The more time I spent with him, though, the more I started to realize that a lot of the stuff he said might not have been completely true. His stories about all these models he supposedly dated, about partying with famous DJs, meeting professional athletes, I started to just take everything with a grain of salt. But I kept hanging out with him because he was entertaining and easy to be around. One day, Alex invited me to go with him and his younger brother to their family's beach house in Clearwater, Florida. His dad was pretty well off and owned properties in Arizona, Clearwater, and Aspen. The Clearwater place would be empty this particular weekend, so Alex said it would be fun to go down there. I invited my roommate Kyle to come with us. We all took the same flight down. I met Alex's brother Ethan at the airport. He seemed fine, maybe a little quiet compared to Alex, but normal enough. The beach house was actually really nice. It had 3 bedrooms, which I wasn't expecting. Alex and Ethan each took a room, so Kyle and I shared one. I joked with Kyle that if we met any girls, he was sleeping on the couch. Since we landed kind of late, it was past the point of going to the beach, so we headed to some bars near the water instead. The vibe was pretty chill, a bit of an older crowd, but Alex was getting drunk really, really fast. I wasn't sure why he was downing shots like that. It was a relaxed night, and there was no reason to go that hard. I had to tell him to slow down when he started getting loud and aggressive with random people. This was the first time I'd ever seen him act like this. He was also going up to practically every girl in the bar and very drunkenly hitting on them. Most of the time, the girls looked super uncomfortable. Kyle and I thought it was kind of funny at first, but then it just got embarrassing to be associated with him. At one point, this bigger dude got in his face because Alex was talking to his girlfriend, and I had to step in, pull Alex away, and apologize to the guy to calm things down. As we walked away, Alex shoved me and called me a pussy for not backing him up. Kyle and I told him to just relax. Even his brother Ethan was telling him to chill out. Alex stormed off, I assumed back to the house. Ethan didn't say anything and just followed him. This was a really weird and uncomfortable start to the trip. Kyle and I stayed at the bar and finished our drinks. These 2 girls actually came up to us and joked about how we knew Alex. We ended up getting their numbers. They said they were going out later if we wanted to meet up, and we said sure. After that, I texted Alex asking where he went, and he immediately replied that they went back to the house. Kyle and I walked back and let ourselves in. I expected Alex to still be pissed, but the second we walked in, he jumped up from the couch with this huge smile like nothing had happened, asking if we were going out again tonight. He was still clearly drunk. I told him, yeah, but we should probably hang here and chill for a bit first. Then I mentioned we got those girls' numbers. Alex asked how many girls, and I said 2. His smile disappeared instantly. Then Kyle, trying to joke around, told him that the girls came up to us after he left asking how we knew him. I think he was trying to playfully mess with him, but it was a mistake. Alex got up and stormed into his room and literally slammed the door. I was starting to realize he might have some serious mood issues or something. I was getting weird vibes from both him and Ethan now. I quietly asked Ethan, "Is he always like this?" And Ethan replied, "Like what?" in this really defensive tone. I just said, "Never mind." This was getting seriously uncomfortable. I was hoping Alex would sober up and tomorrow would be better. Kyle and I hung out in our room for a while. Alex never came out. I went over and knocked on his door asking if he wanted to come meet up with those girls with us. He didn't answer. So eventually we just Ubered without them to this club where we were supposed to meet the girls. As I got drunker, Alex started blowing up my phone with messages like, "Where are you? How could you just leave me here? Your stuff is going outside. Don't come back. I don't know why I even invited you." I showed Kyle and the girls, and everyone was genuinely concerned. Something was clearly wrong with Alex, and it was really showing now. As much fun as we were having, we felt like we had to Uber back before Alex actually did something insane. When we got back, Alex was just sitting on the couch by himself in the dark, staring at the wall. I asked if he was okay. He looked at me, then looked away and said, "Yeah, hope you had fun." Then he got up, went to his room, and shut the door. Whatever. We went to bed. Kyle and I stayed up talking for maybe half an hour about Alex, about the whole situation, just processing how weird everything was. Then suddenly we heard footsteps on the tile floor outside our room. We stopped talking. The footsteps came right up to the door and stopped. We both heard it. I whispered to Kyle, "Alex is right outside the door." He whispered back, "I know." It seemed like he had his ear pressed against the door or something, listening to us. We didn't say a word. Literally 5 full minutes went by before we heard the footsteps walk away from the door. Then we heard him talking outside in the living room. He was laughing and saying stuff. But we didn't hear Ethan responding at all. I wanted to see who he was talking to, so I quietly crept to the door and opened it just a crack. I peeked into the living room, which was dark, and I saw Alex standing in the corner with one hand on the wall and his head down. I heard him say, "Joe's always such a fucking idiot." And then he laughed. "My name is Joe." I closed the door as quietly as I could and went back to bed. I whispered to Kyle what I just saw, and his only response was, "What the fuck?" I told him we should leave in the morning, get a hotel, and just do our own thing for the rest of the weekend. He agreed immediately. We tried to go to sleep, but the talking and laughing outside went on for another 10 or 15 minutes. When it finally stopped, we heard the footsteps come back to our door. They stopped for a moment, then walked to his room, and we heard his door close. Finally, we felt safe enough to actually try to sleep. By that point, I was exhausted. I fell asleep pretty fast. But I woke up maybe only 15 or 20 minutes later. I sat up, knowing something had woken me up. I looked at the door, and standing in front of it, inside our room, was Alex. I jumped and said, "Yo, what are you doing?" He lunged at the bed, screaming, trying to grab my throat and yelling, "You're a piece of shit." Kyle had to physically pull him off me and shove him into the corner. Alex was yelling that I sucked, that he invited me here just for me to shit on his life and talk behind his back to his brother. I tried to calm him down and reason with him, but you can't rationalize with crazy. We packed our stuff immediately and called an Uber to a hotel where we stayed until our flight home on Sunday. I saw Alex in the office a few times over the next couple weeks, but he always avoided me, wouldn't look at me, wouldn't talk to me. He eventually transferred to a different office, probably because of me. Alex seemed normal and fun at first, but he turned out to be a very sick, damaged person deep down. And that night at his beach house absolutely terrified me. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you have your own scary story you'd like to share, send it to the email in the description below. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. I'll see you in the next one.